Hey Steve, how you
Hey,
doing?
good. How are you, Nick?
I'm excellent, thanks. I'm good. Hey, I think it's congratulations. Kind of moving out of an operational role,
Yeah.
and into. I'm not sure. What are you doing?
Steve 4.0.
Hmm,
So I'm retired again,
yeah,
this time for good, although I've learned never to say never. But, I retired after Nasira
yeah,
and VMware. And then that held for 5 years, and then I went back to Aviatrix,
yeah.
which was great. But I really, Nick, wished I could have unseen what I saw. And I saw
Huh,
this, the cloud happening, and I saw enterprise. I mean, we've had these conversations, when I started 4 or 5 years ago. If you
yeah,
listen to the pundits and the VCs 4 or 5 years ago, they tell you that enterprise IT is completely dead. Everything's going to be GitHub and the developer, and Steve, you're a dinosaur.
yeah,
It's all the IT has no value, and everything has to be open source, and everything has to go through the developer.
yeah,
And that was the case for a period there. But about 5 years ago, I call it the Cambrian explosion to cloud, was when IT said, "Now hang on here,
yeah,
we're, we're in a mess. Like this whole cloud thing, and all these developers going off and doing all these things. We're putting our company at risk here." And
yeah,
then all the developers all came running back to IT and said, "We don't know what we did. It doesn't work, and we just got hacked." So guess what? All of a sudden, the companies all went back to the old IT guys and said, "You need to save us."
yeah,
I saw this kind of happening. I mean, I was, an investor and advisor in a bunch of companies. I saw all this happen, and I was like, "My God, it's the revenge of the old guys. IT's coming
yeah,
back." This is 5 years ago, and everybody said, "You're crazy." And then, of course, I knew the world was going to go multi-cloud. Everybody said, "You're crazy. It's
yeah,
all in the AWS." So do you not pay attention over the last 50 years? Like, it's not going to be that way. And
yeah,
sure enough, and so now it'll be 5 years now, actually, that I started at Aviatrix. And, it was not meant for me to be, another 10 year. I just turned 60, Nick.
yeah. You look great.
Yeah, thanks. And
Yeah,
it was not meant to be. I'm not one of those guys who wants to die in the chair, you know?
yeah,
And I don't define myself by my title.
yeah,
I like wearing t-shirts and being a nobody, right? And so
mm,
my definition of me is not, but CEO of some company. I go do it because I had to go do it, and I
mm,
saw what was happening with cloud, and I'm so excited about handing it off to Doug Merritt. I mean, I don't know, we haven't talked since that, but like I'm a 1 to 100 guy, 1 to 100
mm,
million. I'm a 0 to 1.
mm.
You know me. We've known each
I
other
know.
for 30 something years. That's me. Doug
Yeah,
is a 100 to 1 billion guy. He can't do what I do, and I can't do what he does.
yeah.
And so,
They're both hard.
yeah. And so for
Yeah,
me, now it's like, okay, 5 years, good. And you know what Doug said? Because Steve, I'm gonna do the exact same thing that you did. No one's gonna have to push me out. I'm gonna go do the same thing. I'm gonna get to $1 billion in sales, and
mm,
we're going to go bring in the next person, right? Who can take it
yeah,
from 1 billion to 10 billion. I mean, look, Palo Alto, another company I was at, did the same thing, right?
yeah,
With Mark McLaughlin to Nikesh. Nikesh has done a fantastic job. And
yeah.
so anyway, for me, it's now, I think I'm just going to do, I've been reading this book called From Strength to Strength, and then
Mm.
I'll stop talking, Nick, and let you.
I know. I was gonna interrupt you, but like, oh, he's kind of on a roll.
This is
Let him go.
I'm pulling it in, Nick. I'm pulling it in. Is now is for me actually is coaching, right?
Mm,
I'm never going to go back operationally. I'm 60. It's like done. Like
yeah,
it's been great. I loved it. I really didn't want to. I had hoped. I wished I had, like I said, I wished I had not seen what I saw, but it was just such a great opportunity with Aviatrix. Like I got to play this out. Once I saw
yeah.
it, I'm like, now what am I going to do? Not be involved?
I know.
Like
It's
I had to. So, but I'm
it's
not
tough.
going to get into that again. But what I do want to do is mostly be retired. I think we're going to talk about this. work on my health, work on nutrition, get back to being in great shape, and then stay involved, but from a standpoint of coaching and coaching CEOs that I enjoy, but not being on boards. So when I quit Aviatrix, I was on boards, and the problem was when you're on a board, the CEO works for you.
Yeah.
I don't want to be on a board anymore. I actually want to work for the CEO and help navigate the CEO navigate how to deal with mostly shitty boards. I got to be honest with you, right? And how do you do that? And I've got 20 years, 30 years of navigating that. And a lot of these CEOs don't have someone that's a confidant, because the board, they work for the board, and you really can't go to the board and have that conversation that maybe you're embarrassed to have. And maybe you don't have people internally that you can go and say, what should I do? And so I think that's what I call Steve 4.0, is that's going to be the next 20 years for me, is just probably being involved with people that I enjoy in an industry. It'll always be in this industry. I'm a IT infrastructure guy. And so long intro, but that's what I'm up to.
Finally came to acceptance, IT infrastructure. Yeah. So I wanted to actually rewind a little bit and kind of bring us like this point, so it's like, I think we don't really hear that much from, folks in our industry about their career paths. And there's a lot of folks who learn that and kind of see what decisions that you made and others made that kind of brought you to like where you are. So, just a little bit, about kind of career path and kind of like maybe what were the big decisions you have? Because like we started, working together when you were over at Synoptics, was it? Yeah. Or was it Bay Network? Synoptics?
No, I think it was Synoptics. I was a product manager. I actually was an engineer at Synoptics, and then product management, I think, when we ended up meeting.
Yeah.
I was the Ethernet product manager. We only had one. I was it. Ethernet.
Oh my, yeah. There were a lot more that came after you.
Yeah.
So why don't you just share a little bit about your path?
I'd say the number one thing is intention. And I say this to my kids as well. And in fact, it's interesting when I think we're going to get into this into Juniper. The first time I became CEO at Nicira, it was week 1, and I called Scott Krenz. I was a baseball coach, and his son Drew was on my baseball team with my son, and so I knew Scott. And when I became a CEO, I called him up out of the blue, and I just said, Scott, you've been a pretty successful CEO at Juniper for 10 years. What words of advice would you have for me? And one of the ones, he gave me 3 pieces, but one of them was never underestimate the power of intention. And you treat everything, life and companies and everything else, like a puzzle, meaning you take the puzzle cover and you put it up on the desk, right? And you look at it. And your puzzle is different than everybody else's puzzle. And what happens is life puts not just the pieces to your puzzle on your table, but everybody's puzzle. So you may be building, a red barn, but all the pieces on your table, they're for 100 other puzzles. So you have to know what you're building to be able to look and go, that's one of my pieces. Versus most humans don't look at the puzzle box top. They don't know what they're building, and they see all these pieces and they go, oh, look at this lovely green piece. That looks like a nice piece. Maybe I'll take it. And then what they're left with is a hodgepodge, and then they have no idea. So if you don't know where you're going, anywhere will get you there. So I'd say the most important thing is, and it's difficult, is the more that you can have an intention of where you're going, the execution of that, and this relates to companies as well, is actually easy, because now you know whether to go left or right, because you lock down where I'm going, you lock down where I'm at, and then you draw a line. And then as you go along, you'll twist and turn, not completely on that path, but in the general direction of that path, because you have directionality. And so when I was at Synoptics, you may remember him, but Bill Lanfrey was so we all worked for Bill Lanfrey in the product management team. And he ran marketing, and I said, I want to be him. More specific that you can make the intention It wasn't like, oh, I want to be a VP of marketing. No, I want to be Bill Landry.
Oh.
How do I become Bill Landry? And oh, by the way, he retired from Synoptics at like 42 or whatever he was. And I said, I want to be that guy. How do I become that guy? And I said, well, I was an engineer, and then I went into product management because I wanted to broaden my base and learn new things. And I looked and I said, okay, what do I need to do in order to become that VP of marketing? And that pushed me to go into product marketing, to actually go on the marketing side. And when I did that, all the people in product management, what are you doing? This is our group. Product management runs a company. And now you're going, yeah, no, I got bigger ideas and just, I don't want to run product management. I want to run marketing. And so having that intention, I'd say, is probably the right thing. And then something that probably most people don't do right now, I would say the other thing is building a base. I went to engineering. I was an engineer. I did engineering because my dad said it just, and I took electrical because it was the hardest. My dad said, it just proves that you're smart and you can learn.
Bingo.
You can do anything you want.
That's really smart. Yeah.
You could go to med school. You could do whatever you want to go and do. But this is build the base. I was an engineer not because I wanted to be an engineer. I was an engineer because I wanted to build the base. I went into product management not because I wanted to be in product management, because I wanted to build the base. I did marketing because I wanted to build the base. And then as you build the base, guess what happens? The building can go pretty high. Now all of a sudden you have the ability to become a CEO because you've been in product management, you did market, go to market, all these things. So it's delay of gratification, I would say, are the key things, right? Don't try to, everything has its time. You can't short circuit these things and skip steps, as John Gendricks, who's partner of mine for many, many years in Aviatrix and Force 10 and Blue Coat and other companies, you can't skip steps. And so many kids these days want to skip steps and they go for the title and they're not ready.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, that's one that's really great. Intentions, base. Actually, I didn't know that you had a double E, degree, but I totally agree with your dad. It's like, I got a double E, one, because I like electrical, then I like engineering, but I never practiced it, what I found about going through that curriculum, it really teaches you how to think, and it gives you discipline, and really it gives you a lot of respect, which I never thought about that. Like, it's like, when you're starting your career and, and you have a hard engineering degree, then folks say, okay, they know a thing or two, and they know how to kind of get through some difficult, courses and navigate. And I think that carries a lot of people far, in their career. And, what I love that discipline. I love engineering, my biggest, maybe it's a regret, is that I didn't apply engineering as I was taught, i.e. to build product. I applied engineering to kind of build other things, and to be able to see things in the industry and comment and to articulate them, and that, so if I have any kind of regret in my kind of journey, it was that I didn't practice. And that's why I'm really proud of my son. My son is like, he's an engineer. He practices. He's a freaking great engineer too. And I just, really proud of that boy. And, and I'm glad he's on that journey. So base, intention, those are really great. So I want to kind of, but I think you still got to kind of go through one or two more things. Like, okay, great. So you kind of go through the various different kind of disciplines, kind of in corporate structure in engineering companies, or companies that are building, product. You got great role models, and then you get into like, marketing, run marketing, have a big impact in that. And then when did you kind of transition to think about, kind of heading up the companies?
So I was VP of marketing at Palo Alto Networks. So I was the first VP of marketing at Palo Alto. Did that for 3 years. And we made a CEO change. And the board wanted me to be the interim CEO for 6 months until we could find the next CEO. I was always a VP of marketing that was always I viewed myself as a business executive that just happened to run marketing, right? So I could run any function. I was an engineer, went into product management, did marketing, but I didn't consider myself I was not a Marcom marketing person. I knew what we did, right? And so at Palo Alto, I spent most of my time actually on go-to-market, talking to customers, driving the business, training salespeople, really driving the business. So when I became interim CEO, really my job didn't change. I kept doing the same thing. In fact, I stayed on. I was still the VP of marketing. I just spent 90% of my time as the interim CEO. And it turns out I loved it. And I think product management is actually the best training ground to become a CEO, because you have all the responsibility and none of the authority. No one works for you. You can't tell anyone what to do. But you have probably the greatest influence in all the company, because as a tech company, it is all about the product. You are the center of the solar system. Everything revolves around you. If anything goes wrong, and we were taught this at Synoptics, it's your fault. Sales can't sell it, it's your fault. Marketing markets the wrong thing, your fault. The engineers have a bug, your fault. You're right. It's all about you as defined as that product CEO.
They're the networking guys.
So yeah, it's true, and you want that. And so at Palo Alto in the early days, and plus now I was probably in my 40s at that point. I had been through a bunch of different startups. I dealt with a bunch of different boards. It was the perfect time for me, because I had gone through a lot of all this stuff, and it wasn't like, oh my God, I'm a CEO and now I've never even been to a board meeting, or I don't even know what to do as a CEO. I know exactly what to do, right? And so it was perfect. And then what I realized is, I kind of looked and I said, so what's your deal, Mullaney? Like I would say to some people, what's your deal? Like, is that it? Am I going to is VP of marketing the pinnacle of what I'm going to do? Because I had been doing it for 10 years. And I kind of like, is that it? If I'm going to make this move, I'm going to make this move now. And in fact, being at Pan kind of gave me a little bit of the, back seat with the fake steering wheel. You're kind of the CEO, but not really, right? You're just the interim CEO. No one expects anything from you, right? And I loved it. And I said, I'm going to go do this. And I loved Palo Alto Networks. I mean, it wasn't
great company.
Yeah, I mean, and even then they were great, and look, the same guys are still there. Lee Klarich and Nir Zook and Rajiv Batra. I mean, the same guys are still there. A lot of people still there. It's a great company. But I just said, I just have this thing inside of me that I need to go run my own thing. And that's when I went to Nicira. And that's what kind of changed for me. Was at Pan when I would say I was given the backseat, fake steering wheel, interim CEO, that kind of gave me the confidence, I would say, to say, I can go do this.
Yeah, nice way to kind of like, no pun intended, kind of back in, to be
and
CEO.
do a little try and buy.
Yeah. No, that was that was really a great opportunity. Great that you seized that. Okay, great. And obviously we know that you did, really great at Nicira, made a huge impact. It's like, the way that I kind of measure that is that look at all the corporations that have kind of virtualization networking teams, and that was really all because of Nicira, and that acquisition by VMware. And then Aviatrix is on this really great trend line. We're going to talk about that, in a little bit. But I think I want to kind of touch on one thing that we never really talk about in our industry, and that's kind of health and wellness. It's like we're both in our 60s, now, and so you've always been in great shape, and both kind of mentally and and obviously and physically. So I'm kind of curious, like, what's your routine? How do you kind of view that? Like, there's nutritional parts and there's like exercise parts. So is that a big part of your day? Or to start your day?
I don't know. It's probably as you get older, Nick, you get into a lot of this stuff, but I'm into all these different biohacking things, and now I got time, right? So I walk a couple hours every day. Why? Well, I got the time, right? And so I work out every day. Since I retired. I've lost about 12 pounds, which is great. And not that I was heavy, but every year you gain a pound or so. And then all of a sudden, 10 years later, you're like, wait a minute, I got an extra 10 pounds. And so you do that, you feel much better. You can start, it opens up to all the pants you weren't able to wear anymore.
Which is, all of a sudden your wardrobe opens up.
My wardrobe dramatically increases. And then I get on, like, there's so many podcasts now, like I just get on these podcasts, and I'm in Boston a lot, and I have this whole loop across, Longfellow Bridge and over to MIT and down and around the Charles, and rain or shine or whatever. And I just put the earphone. I take 2 or 3 earbuds with me, and I pop them in, and they're fantastic because you go for a couple hour, 2-hour walk, and you're listening to these different podcasts. So I listen to a lot of kind of like nutrition, exercise, and I'd say the main thing for me, like on that side, is just, I would say a couple things. One is, as you get older, you have to have muscle. They still don't even really, I think, comprehend the benefits of having muscle, right? You don't want to be skinny. You don't want to be skinny fat. You as you get older, you've got to have muscle. That's the lifeblood that keeps you young. And then I would say the other thing is you got to lose weight, right? Like, all your markers get better. If you go lose 12, 15 pounds, everything gets better. And healthcare today is not healthcare, it's sick care, right? Like, I mean, we're engineers. And so what we try to do is solve the problem. Most of the time, doctors, I mean, nothing to slam doctors. My brother's a doctor, but they just try to give you a pill, right?
Yeah.
And let's load you up with every pill and treat the symptom. It's like, well, wait a minute. Like, what's the problem? No, you have that symptom, we give you this pill. And I think, diet in terms of, things like, I mean, sugar is, bad.
Figure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it
used to be salt. Salt was like the really kind of the enemy.
It's not, and
it's
like everything else. Like I heard this thing, would somebody summarize it in some podcast? Eat real food, mostly vegetables and not a lot of it, right? We overeat. Don't eat that much. Eat real food with if it has an ingredient list, be careful, right? What's in the ingredient of fish and meat and broccoli? Nothing, right? It has one item. You eat real food. If you eat real
protein
food,
and carbs, you
can actually eat a lot.
Yeah. So which podcast have you been listening to?
Rich Roll. There's a great podcast I listen to called Founders. Which I forget the guy's name. He's a biography nut, and he has 300 episodes from all these biographies. He reads them, and then his podcast is he summarizes them for you.
Oh, how cool! Okay,
so look that one up.
Put that on my list. Yeah,
it's super It's super fascinating. I mean, like people like a lot of people say this. Like you the best lessons are in a $30 history book, right? Like to listen to, Charlie Munger or whatever, just or any of the founding fathers or anybody. When you think about like entrepreneurs, like can you think of any better entrepreneur than the founding fathers of the United States? Like the odds that they went against, it's
amazing. And they were so young.
Oh,
like in their 30s,
30s, and going up against the world power of England, and they had nothing,
nothing.
But anyway,
but they had everything.
Listening to, I love hearing about other people's stories because there's always something to learn from them. Yeah.
I've been actually. I plugged into the Huberman Lab, and
I listened to that one too. It gets too technical sometimes.
He's a little, and also a little bit more of a kind of a policeman, telling you what not to do. But I did give up alcohol, because of that. It's like my kids were pushed. Yeah, like I never had, really a problem except for like, blacking out and waking up in the back of a car sometime every once in a while. But I'm only kidding. But it's like, my kids were kind of pushing me, in that direction, because like it's amazing. Like, like the 20 and the 30 years old, they really, after they get out of college, they're not really that into like alcohol anymore, and so they've been pushing me in that direction. So like I actually listened and and I gave it up, and it's like I feel so much better.
That was
Like,
a big, yeah, that was a big part of me losing, I would say, the initial 10 to 12 is, so the problem, Nick, is, every night's a Saturday night for me.
I know. Yeah.
So I've been
Beautiful
traveling.
thing.
Well, it is, but it isn't,
Yeah.
because the problem is, guess what you do? You have a couple drinks every day of the week. Why? Because it's Saturday night. We go out to dinner every night, and you have a drink before dinner, you have a drink with dinner, and all of a sudden you've had, 14 to 20 drinks during the week.
Yeah.
Now I drink.
That's a lot.
I have maybe one drink a week.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm about there.
Yeah.
Huge. Yeah. Absolutely huge.
Yeah.
Actually, you're mentioning a book that you're writing. I'm kind of reading Outlive right now.
I have a stack. The other problem, my ability to buy books far exceeds my ability to read them.
Mine too. I am not a book reader. It's like, so I've been actually, so when I'm working out, I've been listening to books, is kind of like my way to consume them.
That's why podcasts are great, because you can walk and get something done. Yeah. I haven't done the listen to books on tape. I haven't done that. I'll have to try that. It's just
it's like, I just started. You got to be really into it. The only problem is that listening to that book while you're working out is kind of depressing. It's like he's giving you all the statistics about like heart disease and cancer and Alzheimer's, and it's like, oh man, I'm trying to like better myself here,
Yeah, it's like listening to politics. You just get depressed.
Oh my God, that's tough. All right. Anyway, so that was, it was great. So I wanted to maybe let's kind of talk a little bit about industry stuff, So like this week kind of found out about the intention of HPE to buy Juniper. And I don't know, when I first saw it, I scratched my head. I'm like, I wonder why, because also and so I had a couple of different reactions. One was that, all right, Juniper went IPO in 1999, which is that golden era, of going IPO before the .com bust, and they had a fabulous IPO, kind of, I think, gave them around a $5 billion market cap, and now HP's, if the rumors are true right now, the purchase price is around 13 billion.
Yeah.
Which which is a little, I don't know, maybe some people are really happy about that. I think it's a little bit disappointing that to have a 4% compound annual growth rate in a industry that was booming, for all that time. But like, say la vie, but the fit within HP, obviously it signals a big re-entry into the networking industry and to, provide services and support and products into the service provider, space. And Juniper has been surprisingly making some inroads into the enterprise marketplace over the last, couple of quarters. I thought the last quarter, their enterprise revenue actually exceeded their service provider revenue. Wow. So I thought, so it's always hard to like be the Monday quarterback, on these kinds of things. You just don't know what's going on within the companies that are kind of driving that acquisition. But, I'm still kind of scratching my head. Is that the right thing? Because I think they could have bought so many other companies, that maybe would have been, on a higher growth rate. But anyway, so what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Juniper hasn't been relevant in 20 years? I mean, I don't know, 15 years? I mean, since Scott Krenz left, right?
Yeah.
So they just been in what I call the bottom of the bathtub since then, right? So, I mean, they're at high, they had $100 billion market cap, right? And, I mean, that was during the .com stuff. So, I guess my view on it is I think it's a big thing for HP to chew. I mean, it's almost a merger of equals, right? I mean, HPE's market cap is 20 or, 18 or so it's, and mergers of equals, I know from Synoptics and Wellfleet do not work. Right? So most likely it'll be a disaster integration, because they'll probably do what everybody does and they'll try to be all nice and okay, well, if they were smart, they'd go in and fire the entire Juniper executive, right? But humans don't do that because they want to be nice. So, okay, well, we'll pick one of ours and one of yours and one of ours and one of yours. And then you guarantee that it will be failure because who's in charge? Juniper thinks Juniper's in charge and HP thinks HP's in charge. And then they fight for 2 years. That's what we did
Yeah.
at Synoptics and Wellfleet. Doesn't work. So most likely it won't work because mergers of equals just don't work. However, from a thesis perspective, it's actually not a bad, I think actually it's not a bad idea because look, Juniper's revenue is very high margin revenue. So they're going to get that. HPE's got to do something because they've been irrelevant ever since they were born, right? Nobody cares about them. And I think what's going to happen is, again, it goes back to kind of my thesis, which is networking is a system, Nick. We know that infrastructure is a system. It's not this and that and this and that. Networking is an end-to-end system. Now, when you start sprinkling AI magic dust into every software, it's not like there's an AI app. Every app is an AI app, right? What's going to happen is you're going from, and you'll remember this, we're going from centralized cloud to distributed cloud. And cloud means not just AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle. It means everything. On-prem, campus, on-prem data centers, Equinix data centers. It means everything. I'm going to need a fabric across all of that, end to end. So there is no WAN, there is no LAN, there is no data center. There's centers of data everywhere, and I need to stitch all this together. You're going to need routers, Nick, right? And so at some point, the world turns physical. It's not all software and all digital. The real
that is
world
true.
is analog. The real world is the edge, right?
Moving bits around takes hardware.
And guess what? As the world goes from centralized cloud to distributed cloud, why? Because I've got all this data everywhere, and I'm going to move my compute to where my data is, as opposed to moving all this data to where the compute is centrally. It's just, that's how networking is. It's a distributed system. And with that, now I'm going to need end-to-end system. And if you're HPE, Juniper's actually not a bad property to own in terms of the WAN, right?
And that thesis, it does make sense because like HP has been really kind of messaging, the marketplace around kind of NAS and multi-cloud connectivity. Obviously, they've been talking an AI story for a while. Juniper actually has an AI story with the Mist acquisition, that they did. I think everyone is still trying to figure out what cloud edge is, and it's, obviously there's lots of different definitions, but I kind of view FedEx as a really great example of cloud edge. It's like if you can really reduce the latency and get applications closer to where they're needed, then you can actually make big impacts in the business model. You can tell when where that huge fleet of theirs, like when tires need to be inflated, because that's going to be able to save them a certain amount of money in fuel, and you multiply that across millions, of devices, or you get to understand where those particular that fleet is in terms of their maintenance cycles. So I think there's a lot that kind of cloud edge will actually do for particular verticals and businesses. But I think they're different, and I think everyone's trying to kind of figure that out, and maybe they might be glamoring on to particular industry sectors to first address those, because there isn't, as far as I can see, there isn't a general purpose kind of cloud edge like there was for like cloud computing, where you basically buy hosting and you basically build applications and you create a kind of context around that,
Yeah, I think, back when I saw multi-cloud 5 years ago, this is the 100x multi-cloud, right? So multi-cloud means hybrid, multi, on-prem, and you're going to have all kinds of different clouds. And it's not like, and you're right, it's not, AWS. That's in the core, right? But out at the edge, you want it to look like cloud, right? And so the whole point is not connecting to the cloud. It's actually extending the cloud out. How do I extend that cloud operational model and that software model out to where all my computing infrastructure is? And that's the thing that AI is going to do, is you're not just going to have you know, a VPN from some branch, right? It's not just network connectivity.
Yeah.
I'm going to put apps out there, Nick. It's a computing infrastructure. I'm going to have apps, storage, networking. You know, by the way, you're going to have it's even greater security concerns now because it's a distributed infrastructure as opposed to centralized, right?
Yeah.
So I think, and I have no idea if HPE's thinking this or not, but like that isn't a bad thesis, because when you do that, it's going to put severe demands on the network and network security, because you now have a very distributed architecture. We saw this with the internet.
Yeah.
Right. You know, the 80-20 rule flipped, right? Where 80% of the traffic used to be in the LAN, right? Synoptics.
Yeah.
And 20% would go out to the WAN. Why? Because you had your own little data center and everything was right here and everything. You never went outside of your company. As soon as the internet flipped, 80% went outside and 20% was inside. And that basically catapulted Cisco, because now routers become really, really important.
Yeah.
Now on the same thing, the cloud started the same way, where everything was inside. In fact, most people just wanted one cloud. Why? Keep everything in there, right? And then slowly it became, well, I got to have a couple other clouds, but it wasn't because IT said I wanted to do that. It was because the company just started using other clouds, but they did it begrudgingly. Now what's happening, as you go distributed, it blows up that 80, instead of 80% inside the cloud, now it's the other way around. Yeah. Where there's great confusion and transformation is great opportunity, Nick. Yeah. I think we're at the same moment like we were in 1998 for networking, where people like Juniper actually become important again.
Yeah.
Because it is now about building, I got to build highly reliable, fault tolerant, high performing network infrastructure on a global scale.
Yeah, and it's got to be trusted. I think like this era, you know, that we're getting into, and I totally agree with you, because like a couple of thoughts, conflicting thoughts in my head. One, like the only thing I would add to like what you were just talking about is like this generation of infrastructure that we're building has got to be highly integrated with security so that it's trusted. You know, I think that's the key thing that we missed in the previous generation of infrastructure. So I think this has got to really be integrated security. So it's an infrastructure that the business can trust, the developers can trust, even the infrastructure people, you know, can trust is going to be secure. So I think that's, you know, that's really key and important. I think going back to like your, you know, kind of 1998 timeframe, you can kind of see this, you know, it's like there are so many now different kind of technologies and building blocks, you know, so whether that is like kind of like private 5G and connecting into public 5G, whether it's like low orbit satellite, you know, communications, utilizing existing broadband stuff. It's like, it's SD-WAN, it's kind of the carriers moving into this space, like trying to offer like network as a service, which I've been starting to think more in terms of like SASE models than in kind of traditional networking models. There's all these different use cases. It's the cloud edge use case. It's like, you know, just the whole kind of expansion of the multi-cloud story that, you know, that you just mentioned a second ago. And then I think there's another kind of like layer on top of this, and that is, you know, you alluded to it before around AI. And I think what we're starting to see is that, and we've known this for a while, is that while like AI has gotten a lot of kind of the public attention, like within corporations, the cost and the security concerns outweigh their interest in utilizing public AI. So that's driving private, you know, AI implementations. And so now it's like, you know, we have LLM models that are going into like private data centers, and, you know, the whole data center build out for AI is something that's going to happen. So I think there's a fundamental change, you know, that's occurring because kind of the opportunities that this technology cycle is affording to the marketplace. And I think we're in desperate need of design patterns and guideposts to show how do we build this stuff. And the needs are there. I don't think we really have a really great models right now to build them. Like Steve, when you were over at Synopsys, you know, and into Bay, that whole 3-tier architecture emerged, and that was the design pattern. Everybody knew it. Everybody can trust it. It was de-risked. You know, you can deploy quickly because you know that others were doing the same thing. We don't have that, you know, today. We really need kind of design patterns, and
Yeah.
not just one, a building block of design patterns
Yeah.
to help
Well, that's what,
facilitate this.
that's what I actually think this year is going to be a pretty interesting year because, and I think the HPE Juniper thing is just the tip of the iceberg. If you look at the market caps of some of the big, Cisco still has a $200 billion market cap. Arista, $75 billion market cap. Like Jay Shree's done a fantastic job. Who would have ever thought they'd be $75 billion market cap?
Yeah.
75. Palo Alto teetering in $100 billion market cap, right? Yeah. You look at those companies, and to what you had said, security belongs integrated where? Network security belongs integrated into the network. This is what we did at Nicira. This is how NSX became a $4 billion business for VMware, saved VMware. Why? Because we integrated network security into the network. We did the same thing at Aviatrix, right? We're integrating network security into the fabric of the network such that it's just part of as you add network, you add security. It's not a bolt-on.
Yeah.
And that of course is what's going to happen. And so I think what's going to happen is you're going to have networking people getting into security, and they're going to have security people getting into network. Why? Because they have to. They're not two different things. So Palo Alto Networks is going to have to become real true to their name, a networking company.
Yeah.
Now, well, it's security integrated into the fabric of the network. Sure. Cisco, right? They've made some.
The Splunk acquisition is huge on that area, and also Palo Alto
there's going to be a collision of these people. Maybe it's HPE Juniper. What do you think that's going to say to Cisco and Arista and Palo Alto Networks? Oh, fuck. I don't know if I can say that on your podcast.
Yeah.
What does this mean for us? It means, Antonio's going for it.
Yeah.
Shit, we penciled them off as dead. Now I got to worry about them, right?
I know. Well, it's either like, go ahead. I'm sorry.
What are you going to say?
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
No, I was just, just remember like so many times having conversations with the folks at Arista and with Cisco, and it's like, they don't even want to be associated in the same industry as Juniper, but now that's going to change.
Let me tell you though, but they're also going to have to compete with Palo Alto. So what do you think? So Palo Alto, so put yourself in their shoes. So you're Nikesh. You've grown the business from $18 billion to $100 billion. You've done a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Great job. What have you done for me lately? How are you going to get it to $200 billion? You now have to grow $100 billion over the next 45 years to be viewed successful, right?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? You got to go into a different, you can't just keep consolidating the security market space, which is a shitty market, right? Okay. Yeah. And you're the best at it. So you've done a fantastic job. Now what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Right.
It's
he's going to have to go after the $200 billion market cap of Cisco.
Yeah. It's hard. Yeah. Because you can kind of view Cisco's acquisition of Splunk, because Splunk actually had a higher growth rate, obviously, than Cisco does. And so you can kind of see why that acquisition makes sense. But also, that's a really great example of what we're talking about, that integration of security and networking, even though that's more in kind of the operational center than it is in the actual fabric, of the network. But also Palo Alto, they picked up CloudGenix, a couple of years ago, so they've already been making acquisitions in the networking space. But I totally agree. And I think Fortinet also has made acquisitions in the networking area. I agree with you. I think that's only going to accelerate during the year. I think we're starting to see like maybe the building blocks, of these merged companies starting to offer solutions that fully integrate like networking and security. I think that's the only, I don't have much criticism for like the folks like Vince Cerf and Paul Macropetris and all the folks who were doing the IETF stuff in the early days. I think the only criticism, and they would have the same criticism, is that they just totally ignored security, and they didn't include it.
Yeah, no, it was all about connectivity. We didn't care about security.
Yeah, because we didn't imagine that there would be such bad actors out there. It's like, what?
Well, I don't know who I was listening to. says you create the chaos first before you rein it in, meaning it's like a lot of the people, like with there's a tremendous amount of people who want to regulate AI and do all this stuff. And I know it's John Furrier who says this all the time. And says you gotta, like, you can't regulate something first. You got to create it first, right? You got to create something out of nothing. Then you rein it in, right? Yeah. And so that's kind of how the internet was it wasn't hugely regulated and all this, because it would have died, right? You just die under all this regulation. And so you kind of have to let it go and create, and then you rein it in, right? You got to let a little chaos happen and then rein in the chaos later.
Yeah. Well, I really hope that with this new cycle, and I'll use like your kind of view of that, like, centralized and distributed. I think when we first did the internet, it was a highly distributed system, and it was kind of equal playing field for all. And then we got browsers into the marketplace. Then the biggest companies, the littlest companies could look like the biggest companies. And it was a great equalizer, a great democratization of the economy. But then as we went into the cloud area, we got all centralized, and so I hope that this next cycle where we're starting to do more distributed, and cloud doesn't mean just like for companies, but it really means your company. It means what's happening on that edge piece, those existing large cloud providers, and that kind of provides a little bit more democratization, back to to the industry.
Like every enterprise, I mean, you with ONUG, you talk to all the large enterprises all the time. They're horrified of being beholden to AWS or Azure or Google. They don't want to be locked into any one of these people. They've seen this game before. And if they start moving all their AI data into one of those clouds, they are never going to get that out. Yeah. And so they want their infrastructure. And honestly, they want to commoditize the cloud providers and keep that level of control. It's like federal government versus state government, right? All the enterprise companies are like Texas, right? No, we want to regulate ourselves. We want to, govern ourselves. We want a small federal government, right? And this is what you need to focus on, but we want to be able to handle this. That's most of the top, Global 500 enterprises say, no, I need to be in control of what I'm doing because you don't care about me, right? I do. And I want to leverage tools that I want to leverage, but I want to create my global infrastructure. Yeah. And it always cycles, right? Everything's a sine curve of centralized and distributed. And I think it's swinging back to the enterprises now being under control and saying, no. I need to control this. I'm going to have my own platform. And I'm going to build my global infrastructure, and I will leverage what I need to leverage underneath that. But I'm in control.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think the big mistake that was made 5 years ago was the trade-off between convenience and control, right? Yeah. It was convenient, for the developers to write applications within kind of a public cloud environment, but they didn't realize how much control they were losing. And I think once they all woke up to that,
they gave up all control. Yeah.
They were like, okay, timeout, here. And I think, what we saw kind of post-pandemic was the big pullback, right? And it's like, you see growth rates, that were projected to be like 30% on top of like massively large bases of like $500 billion in cloud spend, during the cloud era. It's like, like 15%, like that being cut in half. It's still big money, but like that's a big haircut, in terms of growth for those companies. So I think, so I'm with you. There's this big kind of transformation that's happening. It'll be interesting to see, how kind of I think the AI piece is actually really important from an infrastructure point of view, mainly for control, because like they're not going to, like large enterprises are not going to be shuttling data back and forth, between their data centers and the cloud providers. And also it's like, it opens up an attack vector, all the questions that they're concerned about are also now all of a sudden going to be like, in a little company that can't even govern itself, like OpenAI, it's like that, that ain't going to happen. Right. So, all right. So I have like actually one last question, and, or topic really. The IPO market, it's been closed for a long time. It might have been, I'm not sure if this is accurate or not, but it seems like it's the largest time the window has been closed. that I can remember.
It feels like a long time. I don't know if there's probably been other times, but it's been similar for sure. I think it's back to how it used to be. There's going to be a tremendous amount of startups that are going to die, right? They're not going to get any more money. I think quality there'll always be a flight to quality. In fact, in some ways it's better for quality companies because it allows you to further differentiate yourself versus when I was in engineering school, I loved it when the average test score was 26.
Yeah.
Then you get an 88. You can get an 88, and it differentiates the people that are smart from the pretenders. Nothing worse than an average score of 96.
Yeah,
one little minor error, and you get a 94. You're below average. So I always wanted super hard tests. And
I'm not sure if I'm with you on that.
Well, now you really get the separation, right? And but I think this is the way the market is now. It's super hard test, and so it provides that separation, I think, of the quality. So the quality companies will go IPO. I think you're even seeing it now. We've been in a little bit of defensive mode for the last couple of years with COVID and this and that, and valuations coming down. But I'm already seeing it. A company I'm on the board of and working with Zedata, they just raised around a bunch of money, and it's up 30% from what they raised a year ago. So good quality companies have no problem getting money at increased valuations. Bad companies are not going to get any more money. Even average companies are not going to get any more money. It's a good thing. Flush it all out. And I think as long as people just get that expectation of what the value is, but if you're going to go IPO, okay, maybe you could have gone IPO at 15 billion, and now you're going at 5 or 10. Who cares, right?
Yeah.
Take a long-term view and grow the business, right? It doesn't matter, right? So get over your valuation that you think you had. If your business is strong and and it's back to the way it used to be, which is you're going to have to, generate free cash, right? Like it's no longer about, you're going to get rewarded for lower growth and profitability than you are for higher growth and unprofitable. And I think everybody just did a flip to that, and it has to kind of clear its way out. And I think soon I think good companies are going to go IPO. I don't think it's going to be a rush like where the window opens and now hundreds. I think it'll still be the good ones, and there'll be good businesses. And I think that'll happen this year. And, hopefully next year, 2025 is even better, right? I mean, it seems like it should be.
I think that's probably the right time frame. I think Stripe is kind of like what a lot of people are looking for.
They've been waiting.
To see really what Stripe comes out with and what their valuation is. And so I'm kind of I'm rooting for them, that they actually have a good experience and a good IPO. And
I think tech, I think, I know Dan Ives. I'm a huge Dan Ives fan, and he's cheering every chance he gets on CNBC to say this is the biggest transformation in the last 30 years. And, he's always been that, kind of positive. But I do agree. I mean, you look at the market caps, you look at Palo at 100, you look at Arista at 75 billion.
Yeah.
And look at Microsoft at closing in on 3 trillion.
Yeah. That's
market caps are big.
Yeah.
You're telling me for tech, there's an opportunity in there, right? Like there's big market caps.
Yeah. There's like such a kind of pyramid, or I'm not even sure if it's a pyramid. It seems like a skyscraper.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah,
and it's like the base isn't wide enough. And so we need to kind of start filling out that base.
Yep.
Well, Steve, I think this was like really great.
Good to catch up.
It was really great to catch up with you, and and kind of chat and hit like all these different topics. I wish you luck in Steve Mullaney 4.0.
Yeah.
And stay in touch. It'd be great to chat with you. I'm sure I will. I'm sure we'll kind of be chatting.
Well, I'm building a house in Narragansett.
I'm
gonna have to go out fishing with you one time.
That's great. It's like tuna fishing was a little bit off this year.
Yeah.
But if you're up for that, love to go out with you, bring you out there.
Great.
Bye.